Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Green Triumph session. Green Triumph is a green tea from Hubei Province, which is in central China. So by the end of this session, you're going to know a few more things than you knew before you started this session. One of the things in particular is you're going to know what tujia refers to. We'll spend some time talking about that. You're going to have a better understanding of exactly how this tea is put together and what about the terroir makes this tea so unique. So these will be some of the main things that you'll take away from today's session. Before we actually jump into the session, let's do a quick review of news of the shop this week. We've tasted, tested, and ascertained that we're going to get between 30 and 40 new teas. We also, for those of you who know that we have special pots, we also look like, well, we're in negotiation right now to see if we can purchase some more special pots. Won't be many, because remember, these things are not inexpensive, and therefore we're looking at 5 to 6 potential new pots to add to the collection. So that's some of the main things that we're thinking about. So let's go ahead and switch gears and go historical first off. Actually, let's go geography first. So Hubei is in central China. It borders Hunan, which is to the south. It also borders Sichuan, which is to the west. So historically, you read about in the 80s and 90s that the Chinese took the Changjiang, which is the Yangtze River, Y-A-N-G-T-Z-E. That's the romanization in the West. But they actually call it the Changjiang and dammed it up. Called the Three Dams Project. And it took years and years to get that completed. And they buried a lot of land when they did that. But that is not so far away because the Yangtze River runs through Sichuan, runs through Hubei Province. And there's a set of mountains that the Yangtze is north of, and those are called the Wuling Mountains. So now we're getting close to where we're supposed to be. Those Wuling Mountains are thought of as kind of a home base for tea in central China. Why is that? So historically, they've written about these mountains and this area and tea from this area. And as archaeologists, as scholars have looked at these writings and translated and retranslated and gotten better at understanding everything that these writings implied, it seems to indicate that in those mountains, there were tea trees. The tea trees, we've talked about tea trees before, right? Yunnan, you currently have tea trees, ancient tea trees, really ancient tea trees, stuck between 3,000 and 4,000 years old. In Hunan, it looks like what they're talking about are tea trees that could be as old as a couple thousand years. So why do I bring this up? Because the next part of what you're likely to be thinking is, oh my gosh, another ancient tea. Green Triumph is not an ancient tea. It's an old bush tea, but it is not an ancient tea. So remembering that we make an artificial distinction, don't we? That artificial distinction, you get up to be about 100 years old, that's old. 100 to somewhere around 1,000, hey, that's really old. And then after 1,000, that's ancient. So the varietal of green triumph comes from these forests where there were apparently these tea trees. And the tea trees, as they were described during the Tang Dynasty, let's get ourselves centered time-wise again, 618 to about 960 or thereabouts. They were described as being about 45 feet high, about 3 feet in diameter. So not these huge trees that we're used to in Yunnan. However, still large enough and still distinct enough and still surprising enough. So remember, the question has always been asked, and the answer is unclear. The question is asked, if tea originated in Yunnan, in China, which seems, from all the current research, there doesn't seem to be any argument about that. The discussion then becomes, really, how did it get other places in China? Did it just walk to these other places and go over the mountains, cross the mountains? And I wish they left footprints, because then footprints would have been, tree prints, sorry, would have been much easier to follow. But no, instead, we have this situation where it seems like in each of the provinces, it seems like, even though it's also almost incomprehensible if this is true, it seems like they just independently developed in each of the provinces. I don't believe that. I actually believe that there was some agency that helped the development. So there's 2 or 3 theories about that. One theory is that in Sichuan, which is to the west again of Hubei, there are these lush valleys where lots of the plants that grow in Britain, lots of the plants that, decorative plants that grow in California, in the US, the origin is in this valley in Sichuan. And there were adventurers, plant adventurers in the 19th century from Britain by and large, who took samples of these plants, got them to Britain, and then via the Britain connection, they came to the US. Okay, so it's posited by some scholars in China that the tea plant independently existed in this incredible area in Sichuan. And it was all smaller varietal, so it then migrated to the east and to the south. The only problem with this is, so far, genomically, we can't make that case yet. Chinese scientists continue to study and continue to try and figure out the evolution of the tea plant, but it's not clear. The fact that you have ancient tea plants in Hunan does almost suggest that somehow there was a direct link from Yunnan. How might that have been possible? Remember that over the years, the Old Horse Tea Tree Trail developed. And so that was from Yunnan. It ran in several different directions, including to Southeast Asia. One of the branches ran all the way through China up to Russia. Another branch ran out to the Silk Road. Another branch ran out to Tibet. So it's possible, and this is what seems to make sense, that traders may have brought seeds, and that may have been the way they developed in other places in China. but it's just odd. So I'm bringing this up, not being able to give you a definitive statement. In fact, far from it. Hopefully, I've created even more mystery in your mind. Gosh, before I started this session today, I thought I understood tea originated in Yunnan, took an airplane to these other provinces, got itself planted, and that was that. Well, sadly, I'm leaving you with this mystery that we have ancient tree in Hunan as well. So it's not much. It's just in this one area as far as I know. Yes.
So how does this tie in with the timing that you shared with us about different Buddhist priests connecting with other streams of philosophy and sharing tea and the tea arts with each other? What's the overlay of that timeline again?
So this is a brilliant question. So it's a question about timing of the development of Buddhism in China, and the travel of where people went who were Buddhists and Taoists. So rather than answer the Buddhist part of the question, because the Buddhist part of the question doesn't seem to solve the issue of how tea trees move over, because really in China, Buddhism doesn't really get a firm foothold until about the 3rd century AD. However, what about Taoism? Taoism has existed for a very long time. And so in the, and actually the precursors of Taoism, back when they were writing oracle bones, have existed for even longer. So this would be in the BCs. So it is possible, especially since shamans, pre-Taoist, there is some evidence that there was some traveling being done by shamans. Not only that, remember, and this was a great question because it stimulated my mind as well about the history of all the kingdoms, and all the different indigenous peoples that were moving around and were intermarrying. And of course, as intermarriage occurred, gifts went with intermarriage. And so the result is, that's a great theory that was suggested by that question, that perhaps shamanistic tradition, intermarriage among indigenous peoples and Han peoples and the indigenous groups themselves moved tea from different parts of China to other parts of China. Great question. Great question. Okay, so we've gotten you situated in this beautiful mountainous area. So what else is there about this terroir? 4 distinct seasons. The average temperature is in between 55 and 62, which in all of our minds might on the surface suggest, oh, it's cool there. It's almost like it's next to the ocean. Must be cool all year round. No, it is very hot and humid during the summer. They get 62 inches of annual precipitation, much of it during the hot summer season. They have 240 frost-free days, but they do have deep and cold winters in this area as well. So this is different than some of the other areas that we've seen really good tea come from. And it's different because we have more things going on, more changes, more highs, more lows than you see in other areas. Well, geez, we're looking up in the sky. Maybe I better look at the soil. Is the soil nice and red? Is it like Yunnan soil, nice and rich? Oh, no. Wait a minute. this soil is yellow. And there's sandstone. I better take a little bit and see what the pH is. pH is between 4.5 and 6.5. Now, remembering that the best of the teas usually has a lower pH, 4.5 to 5.5. But you do still have good teas between the 5.5 and 6.5. And here is an example of an area where it covers that whole range. So the soil conditions are different here. The weather conditions are more extreme. The water resources. Now that's the one thread that runs through all the great tea areas. Fabulous water resources. This area is no exception. Rivers. Hey, didn't I say the Yangtze runs somewhere a little north of there? There's a river called the Han River. Oh, that's big. It runs through this area. And then when you're in the mountains themselves, everywhere you walk, there are streams, streamlets. It's a very beautiful and inaccessible area. And, you know, sounds funny. I know everybody probably, as we're talking about these tea areas, if we hadn't brought customers to these tea areas, in some ways, these things that I say would be unimaginable. Because when we think of China today, we think of the bullet trains, those magna trains go very fast, and roads everywhere. More than roads everywhere, what about people everywhere? Buildings, nice big modern buildings. And it's developed very fast, and developing faster than any society that size has ever developed. So we take that thought and forget that there are still any number of very remote places which still look like yesterday. Oh no, way beyond yesterday, yesteryear. And so this is one of those places. So it is still impoverished, although it's getting better. Tea is one thing that's making it better. Now, what else is making it better? There's one other thing that many times in similar areas also grows and brings revenue as people make discoveries about it. And that's Chinese traditional medicinal herbs. And so in this area, there are many famous traditional herbs that are being cultivated and grown. Perfect environment, apparently, for these herbs. So these are two important crops which are beginning to change the life for the people who live here. Now, I said you're going to know what tujia refers to by the end of this session. Let's get that over with, because I might forget if I don't get it over with right now. Tujia refers to the name of the indigenous peoples who live primarily in this area. In this particular county, and this is Wufeng County, in this particular county, let's back up. The Tujia people, there are 8 million of them or so. 8th largest minority in China. And 8 million sounds like a big number until you say 1.7 billion. Oh, that's not so big. Okay. 8 million, very small percentage of the Chinese population. And their culture appears to be linked to the ancient B.A. culture. So that was a culture, and there are certain sites, archaeological sites in Sichuan, particularly in Sichuan. There's a fascinating site in Sichuan you go to. They have these elongated face masks. They have what appear to be pictures of people drawings, I should say, of people which make them seem like they're not Asian. It's very strange. And there are a couple of these areas, and they occur in different parts of China. It's really strange. And so they continue to study this situation. And it may actually be related to peoples from Tibet, maybe peoples that come over through Tibet. Not clear, not clear. And so what's the contrast to Tujia? And in some ways, I'm jumping ahead here because I haven't translated the tu as in Tujia. That tu means local, of the land, and the jia is clan. Now, you have Kejia in China. That's another minority of people, and those are guest people. So somehow there is a suggestion through naming convention that these people have been in this spot for a long time, maybe a very long time. So these are the people who cultivate and are the main farmers tea farmers in this area. And so they bring different thought patterns, just as we see in Yunnan. You get the indigenous people farming, well, they have different thought patterns in the development of how they process tea. This is no exception. When you see these people, if you don't see them in their traditional dress and you take a quick scan, they look like Han people. You look a little closer, you can see some facial differences. And of course, when they're wearing their traditional outfits, they're beautiful. And that isn't to say that the people have become beautiful. What I mean is the clothes are very beautiful. People are inherently beautiful too. So let's get that all cleared up and straightened away. So these are the farmers who control this particular, or these farmers, a lot of the farmers belong to this set of indigenous peoples. They do have their own language. And one of the things that's distinctive about them is, and I know, this is it's almost too silly for me to say it. I'm going to say it anyway, because in the West now, there is this in France, and in Sonoma and Napa, you now have vintners who have these great orchards, and they put Mozart out there, Bach, and they play music to the plants so that the plants, of course, produce wine that is infused with the feeling of this music, presumably. And you have some research on this. That's not what we're talking about today. What we are talking about is when you're in these fields that the Tujia have, it's beautiful because they don't have speakers and booming music. Instead, what they have is the pickers are singing songs constantly. And they're singing, they sing a piece and then another group of pickers responds. It's that type, and it's just incredible. You go out to these fields and it's just fun to be in tea fields anyway, right? But then the singing enhances the whole experience. Now, I'm not suggesting that the tea tastes better because of the singing, but I'm also not denying that that might be a possibility.
Is the Tujia language tonal, like Mandarin or Cantonese?
Is the Tujia language tonal? It is not the same tones as Mandarin. In some cases, it's really closer to, it appears to be closer to Tibetan. And so that's why it appears that there's that relationship. And remember, I placed you where this is. You go to the left, that's wrong. You go west, and you're in Sichuan. What borders Sichuan? Tibet. And so there is a natural potential flow from that direction.
Great comment by a participant. This extends the meaning of tea rhythm.
Love this comment about, yes, changing or augmenting tea rhythm. Love that. So actually, the next thing I'm going to get from all of you is you're going to come in. I only want teas where they sing to the teas. If you don't have, just give me the singing teas. This is why sometimes too much information, right? Okay, I've talked enough. You're thirsty enough. And the tea master has been waiting for a long time and is saying, oh, with patience. Oh, okay, that's good. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to bring forth the tea master. Shopping.
Oh, okay. 你好，早上好。Good morning， 早上好。We do 出家 the green tea in 出家。So so same I'm copy the perform in the same section in 出家 in Hubei Province in China. So they use the large cup, but they use large cup. They use so this
Yeah.
They use this style, but we similar so we can. This is hard,
Hard to handle.
Hard handle. This is very easy Yeah.
So it is interesting because when they drink this tea, and every area has a difference in the tools they use, both in brewing and consuming, and styles in which they consume. And Hubei has said it exactly correctly, that they use those tall cups. And it is a little harder to handle because they don't have handles on them. So the usual tableau here, Hubei has 4 cups set up, and this is to be able to cool down, dissipate the steam, and get the water ready for the tea faster. If you have 2, that's fine. If you have 3, that's fine. All of this these are techniques we've developed over time to speed the process. So that was 200-degree water that she put through all of those glasses, make sure that they were clean, make sure that they're heated. And now she's drawing 175-degree water. And that's what you're going to see her use to dissipate the heat. So don't do that unless you've taken a dexterity check, because it's very easy to get water all over the place, especially if you lose attention. So dissipating the heat, dissipating the steam actually, which also lowers the heat. And remember, we're aiming for 170. This is 5 grams. And this is going to be a 2-minute steep. So, as with any way of doing something, you develop rules for it, and you develop ways that make it easy. So you notice she has everything set up. This isn't set up in random. It's set up in an organized way. And typically in China or Japan, when you are involved in tea, you try and they have rules of where things should be as the process is, as you're doing the process of brewing. All right, so she put in the leaves, pouring the water. She's pouring from the kettle with the gooseneck because she can control the stream more easily. Take a look at this. Lots of action in the leaves. You've got some at the bottom, you've got some at the top, and then you've got some floating around. Very beautiful. Okay, and we set the timer for 2 minutes. All right, is this tea processed any differently than any other green tea? So in the big picture, the answer is no. At the detail level, there are always details which are a little different. So they have 2 drying sessions at the end, but they pick just like you would pick, and this is a spring pick, and they wither shortly, and then they actually go through a process. It depends. There's 2 ways to do it. The traditional hand process of using a wok and frying the leaves, but nowadays they have another process which uses another machine. So the non-traditional, using this machine, it blows hot air on them, very hot air on the leaves, and the result is the same. You deactivate or denature the oxidation enzyme. And after that, then they let the leaves rest. What does that do? It, in fact, reinvigorates the leaves. They seem to reinvigorate. What's really happening? The water which is left in the leaves, the moisture which is left in the leaves, redistributes, right? And it seems like the leaf is coming to life again. So they call that the reinvigoration phase. Yep, 2 minutes is up. Tea master is going to separate the tea from the tea liquor. You notice she's very present, not in a rush, but not slow either. All right. So this is what you get. And if you look at this closely when you do it, you're going to see a tremendous number of trichomes in there. So that's the first thing you're going to see. The other thing you're going to note is the color of this. This color is beautiful. It's a, from my perspective, I would call this a very, very light green. Beautiful. Let's go through the quality assessment. This is a 170-degree temperature brew, so you're going to be able to take a larger sip. When you take that sip, you're going to try and evaluate where the dryness is on the tongue. You're going to evaluate what the aftertaste is, and then over time, you're going to evaluate the energetics. As you do a second sip, what you're going to do is focus on aroma and focus on flavor and verify what you think you learned the first time around. So let's do that. No, let's have you watch me do that. I understand the dryness of this. Oh yeah, I've got that. Well, I can taste this thing going down, or I can sense this thing going down. I'm going to take a second sip here. I'm thinking about this as it develops in my mouth. I'm thinking about what I'm tasting. And the other thing I'm thinking is you're in for a treat. Those are the two things I'm thinking. I guess I'm not supposed to put that in my notes. You're in for a treat. It's your turn to brew. So we have aesthetics going on here, raining tea leaves. And one of the things that's beautiful about this is after you make it, these leaves are very, very pretty. Color is just very distinctive. Tea Master and all of you are presumably drawing the water to heat up your cups. We're using 200-degree water. You can use any temperature between 175 and 200 or 212 even. Now, time to draw the 170. If you have a direct 170, you can use that. If you have 175, draw that. And whether you have 170 or 175, you're going to dissipate the steam a little bit. Because remembering that doing that always makes the flavor brighter. You notice you're not in this huge rush hour traffic hurry. Very steady, very calm. You're going to get a great flavor out of this. This is what this is all about. You want great flavor. You want to be in the present. You get your bag number 3, labeled Green Triumph. That's 5 grams. It's going to go into the heated cup. You'll shake the cup. You'll get the first scents of the tea leaves. And then if you have a pot that has the leaves in it, you'll transfer water into that pot and pour on the sides of the cup.
Warm leaves have a buttery, sweet, malt, umami scent.
Buttery, sweet, malt, warm leaves. Gosh, I'm looking forward to having this. Anything that starts with buttery, you got me already. And so, yes, they do have a distinctive, very obvious, pleasant aroma. Extremely pleasant aroma. So that's one of the things right away. I'm glad you picked that up. So I was going through the process of this. Oh, and did I hit that? I did hit the 2 minutes. Going through the process of this, and I left you with the reinvigoration. After reinvigoration, they roll. They shape the leaves. When they shape the leaves, or after they shape the leaves, they spread them out and then get them ready for drying. And it's an oven dry, and it's at a lower temperature. And what they're trying to do, excuse me, is to get the water moisture content down to 7% or so. That's first flow through the oven. They then take it out, they look if there's stuff that doesn't belong with the leaves, like stems or anything else that got in there, they get rid of that. They sort it out. Then they do a further oven dry because they want it to get down to 6%. At 6% or a little bit less, the leaves are completely stable. They're shelf stable. You can pack them get them to the shelf or pack them and get them here, and you don't have to worry. If it's on a boat for 30 days, zero problem. If it's on the shelf for 4 months, no problem. It's not going to mold. Okay, your timer is going off. And you're going to separate the tea leaves from the tea bag. You notice it's very steady. And again, taking a look at this color is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful shade of very light green. And you're going to go ahead and enter the tea arena, the quality arena, that is. And tell me what you find.
Participant says, I detect a bright scent in the steeped leaves.
Bright scent in the steeped leaves. What a great opening comment. I'll tell you.
He adds, sorry, it's kind of sweet and vegetal, but also a little hard to describe.
Sweet and vegetal, along with something else which is hard to describe. And you've really got us off on the right track, because generally speaking, when you think of green tea, sweet doesn't come as a first set of words. But the first two commentators have talked about sweetness. One in the aroma, one in the scent of the wet leaves. This is very unusual. And this is a varietal distinction, as well as the way they process it. I'm going to take another sip with you. Okay. After they have gone through the second drying, they do in fact sort one more time, and then they package it. And that's the process. So the entire process to get this tea ready is under 24 hours. So you know that some of these teas take forever. Calif teas, 3 months, 4 months, sometimes 5 months. Some of the green teas, 2 days, 3 days. This is an efficient green tea, under 24 hours. But during that 24-hour period, everybody has to be on their toes, because it's day after day, because the crop rolls in. So first off, how big is this area? This area is 350 square miles. And it's 219,000 acres under cultivation. And in this county, they produce 28,000 tons of tea. And it's not just this tea. It's predominantly green tea, but this is a portion of that. This isn't a huge portion, by the way. There isn't a lot of this tea, but there is a lot of tea being produced in this beautiful place.
One of the participants notes the liquor has a very bright umami that is not at all brine, but it's more grounded and vegetal, and the mouthfeel is almost juicy with some mid-tongue drying after.
Mouthfeel almost juicy with mid-tongue drying after. Love this comment about umami-ness. So the participant calls out umami, but not brine. It's not sea umami, and correctly identifies, wait a minute, this is more a vegetal umami. Love that distinction, because umami, in the West, the language around umami is always a little bit complicated, but people as a default typically say, well, like the sea. But this is not like the sea. Nothing at all like it. And yet umami still fits as a way to categorize this. By the way, one of the things you're going to ask me, because you commented about flavor and you commented about sweetness, one of you is going to think back to some of the other chemical compositions and remember, oh, this must have a lot of amino acids in it. And you would be right. This has more than double the average amount of amino acids that a green tea would have. And there's more. Oh, yes. When we have good tea, there's always more. What about the polyphenol content? Is that more too? And in fact, it is. This has about 40% more polyphenols than most green teas. What else is going on with this? And wait a minute, let's step back. Why would these things? Maybe somebody comes at night and injects more aminos and polyphenols. Not the case. Soil is one thing. Varietal is the other big driving factor. But that's not all either. Sunlight. So remembering, well, and winter. So sunlight and lack of sunlight. Cold. When you have more cold during the winter, you tend to have more amino acids. So remembering in the Wui Mountains in Fujian, in Tumuguan, up there at 7,000 feet above sea level, it actually snows. And so the tea that comes from the fields up there tends to be sweeter, more amino acids, less sunlight. Yes.
Taster said, participant says, the tea liquor is surprising in that it seems to have the buttery light caramel scent that is a hint of oolong, but not roasted at all. So yeah, maybe umami is better.
Great comment. So this particular commentator says, okay, I'm experienced. I know that oolongs, when they're roasted properly and at the highest levels, best varietals, you get that sweetness and caramel and warmth. Now, this isn't a cliff tea. Commentator is correct. And yet there's still that sweetness and butteriness. One of the previous commentators mentioned juiciness, all locked up in this tea. I ask you this. If you had an auntie who said to you, oh no, I don't do green teas. Green teas are always too bitter. Nope, can't do green teas. But auntie, the doc said you got to do green teas. I can't do green teas. They are not. They're just too bitter. Would you be able to serve it? Well, first off, you'd have to put a little food coloring in it because auntie would look at this. This is a green tea. You're trying to trick me. But if you put it in a ceramic cup with a cover and auntie wasn't paying attention, she wouldn't know that this was a green tea. This is your description. And by the way, you made a conclusion, and I haven't forgotten that conclusion. You concluded, hence umami, because it's not roasted, hence umami. I get where you're going with that. Not exactly the language I would use, but that doesn't make it wrong. That means, as all of you have said, this is not your standard umami. This isn't the way the West usually refers to umami. So from that perspective, 100%. Full marks, yes.
Another participant says she's feeling some warming. let's go back up, that she's feeling some warming, which she wasn't expecting from a green tea, both warming and brightening.
Oh no, maybe this isn't a green tea. Maybe a red tea in disguise, warming and brightening. So why might that be the case? That can be the case for several reasons, some of which I can accurately describe, some of which I can't accurately describe. So let's start with the unknown first. The unknown is we still don't have a full chemical composition analysis of this. So there may be some elements in here which are causing it. Oh, and by the way, one of the elements, and this is going to be surprising to you, this has less caffeine than many other green teas, significantly less caffeine. Was it decaffeinated? No, it's this varietal. This is the beauty, and this is why now the tea master has self-control, but this is why I don't have self-control, because, you know, you tell me, okay, 7,500 different varietals. Well, there can't be 7,500 different flavor, profiles. But in fact, as you go through teas in China, you come up with all these combinations, some which fit our preconceptions very well, and then some which jump out of the preconceptions. And this is one of those, which is just a wonderful example of jumping out of preconceptions. And by the way, if you asked me, which I know you're about to, okay, might this have something to do with the Hubei terroir? You know what? I'd give you full marks too, because I've had other Hubei teas that also have exceptional qualities to them, and they're green teas that have exceptional qualities to them that make them always seem bright.
Participant says all that promise from the scent is coming through in the flavor.
Great comment. You know how some teas trick you? They give you nothing in the scent, or they give you a lot in the scent, one or the other, and then when you get to the tea, it's the opposite. There's no lies. This is why I had, by the way, to wear this natural linen today, because, this is a no-lying tea. I guess I better be in that tradition. From scent to the actual flavor, there is a direct line and no deviations. In fact, the scent is rich. It just gets richer as you go into the cup.
Participant also says, this just makes him feel happy. And if this tea were served to both sides before a battle, the battle just would not happen.
Oh, love this comment. So if the Russians and Ukrainians had sat down with this tea at first, everybody would have been so happy, no battle. And so all the leaders
should be in the defense budget.
Hey, tea should be in the defense budget. Absolutely right. Hey, yes, there should be an actual line item for tea in the defense budget. Write to your congressperson. All right. And probably close to exceeding. I haven't exceeded yet. This is a wonderful green tea. All the green teas we have in here are wonderful. But this is exceptional from a balance standpoint. And all the balance is shifted to all of our favorite things. Hints of sweetness, a butteriness, a juiciness, a staying power from start to finish, and actually a little bit of a warming sensation. I have both things going on. It's really interesting. In my chest, I have a warming. In my hands are still cold, but in my chest, I feel that warming. And again, I am unable to give you an answer to the question, why is that? I simply don't know. And I think all of us genetically are different and are probably experiencing this differently. But certainly, if there were one green tea in the world, well, now I'm about to exaggerate. And you know, when I'm wearing this natural fiber, I can't exaggerate. So let's back up from that statement. In fact, I'm very glad it didn't leave my mouth. This, along with some of the other great green teas in here, is an easy tea to get somebody hooked into tea drinking. That is a fair statement, I think. All right. I think the early promises about knowing more about Tuja, learning about the process of the tea, learning what makes this special, learning about the terroir, I think I've fulfilled those promises. It's been very, very fun to share this tea with you. Tea Master and I have been looking forward to doing this tea with you for some time. So what's on tap for next week? We're starting a new session next week. Let's see. Today is September 23rd. I think we're in autumn. Well, maybe we better do something related to autumn. Let me think about this. Next week, I think what we'll do is autumn colors. And then, well, what comes after autumn? That's cold. Let's skip winter and let's just go to early spring for the second one. And once we get into early spring, remembering that it's green and the sun comes up earlier and you feel warmth and the air is good and that makes you feel relaxed. Let's do relaxation for the third tea. So we have a fabulous group of red teas on in the lineup, and 2 out of the 3 of these are extremely hard to find at the level you're going to have here. Your responsibilities this week? Well, since you had such a good green tea, it's to drink more green tea this week. It's going to cool down as we go into the rest of the week, so we'll get that red going starting next Saturday. Be well this week. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.